In this video, we'll talk about how to share a folder on Windows 11 and access it from another computer, like a MacBook. So, if you ever needed to share files between Windows and another Windows machine or Windows and a Mac computer but felt stuck, this video is for you. This will be no complicated setups, we'll just get started. First, we'll set up a shared folder. So, we can press Windows key E or click on the Explorer. And then we can create a new folder. Now this folder can be anywhere, so let's make this a bit larger. Say we put a folder in the Documents folder, so we create a new folder and we'll call it Share. So this is not automatically shared just because I name it Share. We right click on it and click Show More Options, Properties, and then click on Sharing and click Share. So click Share. You'll see this window, your folder is shared. And we'll also click right click Properties. And Advanced Sharing. Share this folder and click Apply. You might want to check the permissions here. What is allowed is it's only allowed to read, or also should the person who accesses it be able to change it or full control. So it depends on how you configure it. Let's say for now, we'll just give it full control to anyone. Click Apply, click OK, Apply, OK, and Close. Now this folder is now shared on the network. It's ready for network sharing. Anybody who on the network can now access it. Now there's nothing in this folder, so we might create some files here. Can be empty files or any type of file. Now, let's create some files here. Just for demonstration purposes. So we have a bunch of files in this folder now, Share, and we should be able to access it from the network, from any other computer, whether that's another Windows computer, a MacBook, a Linux computer, or anything else. Now, for someone to connect to this computer, they need to know the computer's address. Just like if you search for a certain home, you need to know the home address. For a computer, we need the computer address or the network address, which is short called IP address or Internet Protocol address. Now, to see that, we can press Windows key R. So that's Windows key R and PowerShell.x and click OK. You'll see this little window pop up. Now, in this window, we type the command ipconfig. So that's ipconfig. So we get the internet address from this card. If I press enter, you'll see a lot of different information, but one of the lines you'll see is the IP version 4 address or IP address. That is the network address of the computer. Just like your home has an address, your computer has an address on the network. Now that we know the network address, we can then connect to it from another computer. So from the other computer, we can simply then type the internet address. Now keep in mind, this is unique to your computer. So it is not the same as in the video. It will be different depending on your computer, but they should be 4 numbers with some between 0 and 255, 4 separate numbers, usually starting with 192.168. On some networks, they start with 10.10. It depends on the network configuration. But anyway, if you type ipconfig, you should see your address, your network address of the computer. Now let's switch over to the Mac and connect to that shared folder. So first we need to open Finder. We can right click and open a new Finder window. Then in the Finder window, we'll click File we click Go and then connect to Server. Then type the address of the Windows computer and you should be able to connect. If you click Connect, it might ask you the folder you want to access. So in this case, it was the Share folder that we created. We click OK and we should then see inside the folder. Now, depending on the configuration, the firewall might be blocking, but we should be able to see or to look inside the folder. And here we go. Now we can access inside the folder. You'll see these are the files we made. They're 0 bytes. They don't actually contain anything, but we can now access the folder directly on the Windows computer. So that we did that by clicking Go and then typing the address. So connect to server and then this address. Now, if you're on the Linux machine, you would want to type this address in also connect to network. If you're on a Windows machine, you would instead use the backward slashes. So // with this address. So that's only if you're on a Windows machine connecting to another Windows machine. For Mac and Linux, you would click Go and connect the server, and then SMB:// with the address of the Windows computer. So you might wonder what just happened here. So we use something called SMB, that's Server Message Block. It's a network protocol. It's a network protocol to share files and folders. So think of it a bit like a virtual USB. So you can, with this virtual USB drive, you can connect two devices on the same Wi-Fi network. So this only works when you're on the same network, like sharing the Wi-Fi at home or sharing the Wi-Fi in an office. It doesn't work directly over the internet with strange computers on the internet. You would have to be on the same network. So the key here is that they share the SMB servers, the server message block servers, or the Samba servers over the network. Now, sometimes things don't work, so it might be that the firewall is blocking the connection, or you're not on the same Wi-Fi, or maybe file and printer sharing is not enabled on Windows. So sometimes this can create some hiccups. But the general idea here is that folders can be shared. It's just one of the services, one of the network services that can be enabled on Windows. And that's great for internal sharing, but anything you share on the network might also be accessed by a hacker. So that's something to keep in mind. So you might want to try this on your own network, see if you can access a remote computer or remote folder and access the files. Kali Linux is often used by cybersecurity professionals and ethical hackers. Kali Linux is a computer system that you can use for free. It doesn't have any cost at all, and it has all kinds of tools for cybersecurity. So you'll see the GUI looks a bit different than a Windows computer. For example, here we can see the standard programs. So you'll have a terminal, file manager, text editor, web browser, some standard programs that you might find on a Windows computer or Mac computer. But you also see some other things here, like exploit database, vulnerability hub. On the left, you'll see different categories. So different cybersecurity tools. You'll see database assessment, password attacks. So all kinds of tools for password attacks, wireless attacks, different tools for wireless attacks, reverse engineering. So when you have some code or a program, you can figure out the code. Exploitation tools, sniffing, so watching what's going on the network, and other cybersecurity and hacking tools. So this computer system is completely free. It's Linux based, but it's not a standard Linux system in that it has a lot of cybersecurity and hacking tools which are not included in standard computer systems, like password attacks or wireless attack tools. Those are not in standard computer systems. Now, to download this system, you can go start Firefox or whatever browser you're using, and then you can go to the website get or kali.org. You'll see this website. That's kali.org, and then you can download it for your computer system. So you can install the default installer where you install Kali on the computer. Now, only do that if you have really a second computer that you don't use at all. Then you might install it on that. You can run it in a program called virtual machine, or in a program called VMware or VirtualBox. So that's a program that lets you run computer systems inside a program, inside a virtual program. So you can have virtual computers. So it's a nice tool if you don't want to accidentally break your computer, or if you don't have any second computer at hand. There is a mobile version if you want, but it's a bit clunky with typing in the keyboards on the mobile with long commands. It's possible to run it on the cloud. However, in this case, for this course, that doesn't really apply because it would be on a different network. There's a live boot version where you can install the Kali system on a USB stick. Then whenever you need Kali, you just plug in the USB stick, restart the computer, and you have Kali Linux system. And also Windows has a feature called Windows Subsystem for Linux, where you can run Kali commands on top of Windows. So there are different ways to run the Kali system. In this case, I'm using a virtual machine. So I'm running a virtual machine, a virtual computer where Kali is running inside it. But there are different ways to run Kali Linux. The main key is here that Because it's Kali Linux, it has all kind of hacking tools. So password cracking, wireless attacks, and other kind of tools for cybersecurity and ethical hacking. What if I told you that any hacker on the Wi-Fi can discover every device connected and even attempt to access those shared folders? So I'll show you on this computer, this is the hacker's computer, how it can find devices on the network and how it can scan for open services or open ports with Nmap. So when I say ports, we are really talking about services, and these have usually numbers. So ports will be, every service has a unique port. So this is for educational purposes. Always test on your own devices only. So first, this system is Kali Linux. It's often used by hackers for cybersecurity and hacking. I can download it for free from the internet. So that's Kali. You'll see here Kali Live, Kali Linux. First thing the hacker might do is to open a terminal. We'll open a terminal emulator and maybe increase the font size because the default font is quite small. Let's make it a bit larger here. So first thing they might do, either maximize this terminal or keep it on the screen. And they might want to wonder who's online, who is on this public Wi-Fi. They might connect to the same Wi-Fi if you're in an airport, in a restaurant, in a cafe, or any public place that shares the Wi-Fi. It can even be inside offices if there's public sharing. And they might wonder which devices are on this local network. They can discover that using a technique called ARP scanning. So they want to know, hey, who's online? They can do that with a simple command. That's this command, sudo ARP scan -- localnet. That will scan for any device on the local network. If I press enter, you'll see that we have the different devices here that are on the network. So you'll see this network has 4 computers attached to it. And the device, of course, we're looking for is the 139 that you saw in the previous video. So let's break down this command. It does sudo. So this command runs with administrator rights, ARP scan. So this is the tool that asks, hey, who's online? And -- localnet means scan the entire local network. So then we see the results. So these are the results. These 4 are the results. So they show 2 different parts, or actually 3 parts. You see, the first part, the second part, and the third part. Now in the first part, those are the actual addresses of the computers, the network addresses of each device, similar to your home having addresses. Then you'll see the physical addresses. So those are tied to the hardware. They tell you, okay, this is, for example, a television. This is another type of computer. This is another computer, and maybe another is a cell phone. So their hardware also has specific addresses called MAC addresses. So we see 2 things. We see the IP addresses, the address of the device itself, and the physical address, the hardware address. Now that we know these addresses, and we're specifically looking for this one, let's see what services are running for it. Let's scan for open ports. To do that, we can use a tool called Nmap. So with Nmap, we can scan for open services. We can simply type sudo Nmap with the IP address. And then it starts scanning for open services on that device. Now, depending, it might take a while or it might be really fast. By default, it scans a lot of open ports. So it scans a lot of ports, and you'll see it scans from 1 all the way to bigger than 7,000. And we'll see that 2 different ports here are interesting. So one port we find is 445. That port is often used when the files are shared on the network in Windows. Now, other information. So in this case, SMB might be shared on the network, and usually it's combined with 2 different ports. Now, Nmap by default, it limits the scan, so it cuts off at some point to prevent taking too long. So the ports we're looking for specifically for file sharing are ports 445 and 3389. If those ports are shared, it means that, or if those ports are open, those network services, it means that SMB is running. So if we scan that on the target IP address, you'll see that yes, we have file sharing on that computer because those 2 ports are open. You'll see there are some other ports open as well, because anything you share on the network often communicates over a certain port. And these port numbers have unique services. So the combination 445 and 3389, that means file sharing on the network. For example, port 80 is sharing on the web, sometimes 443. And every service has, in such a way, its unique ports. It's just like a communication line. Certain lines are always used for the same kind of service. So now from the hacker's computer, they know who is on the network. They found that out here with the ARP scan command. They know that all these devices are on the network. They know their IP addresses, the hardware addresses. Then they could scan they can now scan any device on the network and see which services are open. So they found these services. And when did a more specific scan, we found that file sharing was open. Now with Nmap, it has all kind of parameters. So if you start sudo nmap, you'll see that you can, it has all kind of parameters to scan for more things. So for example, you can try to detect the operating system. You can select which range you want to scan. For example, port 1 to 65,535. By default, it cuts up somewhere around 3,000 or so. But you can select which port range you want to scan. And for example, we could do that. Let's say we want to scan port 1 to, let's say a larger number. Let's say 5,000. So now it's scanning port 1 to port 5,000. So depending on how many ports you want to scan, if you scroll up here, you'll see that the number of ports available is quite large. So you can scan up to 65,535 ports for every device. So that's a lot of possible ports, for network connections. And depending on how many ports you want to scan, it might take longer or shorter. So in this case, it found some of these ports. Now, you can also detect the operating system. So for example, if we do the ART scan, we find out which devices are on the network. We can then scan for the operating system. We can say sudo nmap -o and then an IP address. So let's pick another IP address for fun. And you'll see, in this case, it scanned a computer and it was a VMware device. It's the virtual network device. Now let's pick 139 just for fun and see if it detects that it's actually running Windows. So this takes a moment or so, and you'll see with the -o, we found out that that device on the network is a Windows 10 computer. It's actually Windows 11, but it detects Windows 10 here. So it can detect that it's a Windows computer. The version accuracy might be a little bit off, but you'll see the device type. So it's a general purpose computer. It's a Windows computer, and we find some OS details. Now, so with ARP scan, we can find any device on the network. And then we can scan the device to see what kind of software is it running, and also maybe what ports are open. So this works for any device. So let's tick .1 and see what it comes up with. Now, sometimes some firewalls, they block this completely. So in such a situation, it might not detect the operating system and ports because the firewall blocks it. So you see this device, you'll see it has no exact matches for the operating system. We do find some ports open, but that's it. So depending, sometimes it might detect the operating system. Usually it will detect the open ports unless the firewall is blocking everything. But in a lot of cases, you can find out about which devices are on the network. And then you can find out the operating system of the target you're scanning and also open ports. So with Nmap, you can discover a lot of information specifically about the target, and ARP scan is more general, like who's on the network. And then Nmap would tell you like, okay, what system is that computer and what network services are running on that computer. Now, that is very useful information for a hacker, because if they know what services are running on the computer and what system is running, so in this case, Microsoft Windows, and they know which services, they can then start to attack those services, either a brute force attack, a password attack, or other types of attacks. So if the attacker or the hacker can find out the devices on the network, with the ARP scan command, they can find devices on the network. They, from a device, can then find out which network services are running or which ports are open, same thing. So with the nmap command, it can then scan the target device. Let's make this full screen for readability. So it's basically telling here who's online, then give me information about this computer, about network services it's running, and it will reply some services if it is running any. In this case, it's a Windows computer, Microsoft Windows. And it has some services running, one of which is 445, which might indicate that it's sharing files and folders on the network. So we can scan for both 445 and 3389. Those ports are always used together when a folder is shared. So now the attacker knows, or the hacker knows, that the services are running here. The Windows computer is sharing one or more files or folders. But from there, it can now start to try to attack that computer. So it can use another tool called crack map execute, and SMB with the address. Remember, SMB is this network service where files and folders are shared. So the same thing as this 445.3389. So it's the name of the network service, server message block or Samba. So if I press enter, we get information that it's a Windows 11 system, and also the version, the type of computer, also the name of the computer, and some other information. So next, they might try to attack the computer. They might know who's using the computer, they might know the username, but not the password. So in Kali Linux, it comes with a default password list. In user share word lists, has this password list. You'll see it's a .gz file. It's txt.gz. You might know txt is just a text file, but .gz means it's compressed. We need to extract it. First, I'll copy this file to the Kali folder. I'll paste it here, right click, extract here. Now this takes a moment or so, and to refresh it, we simply click on desktop and Kali. And now we have this huge text file, 133 megabytes of commonly used passwords. Now I can actually show you the file contents, not by double clicking because the text editor will crash. That's how large it is. You can simply type cat rockutxt and then less, and it will show you the first small list of passwords. And I can go through this file, but it will take forever because it has a million or more passwords. Now what we can do is make this tool, this crack map execute, automatically connect to this shared folder of that computer with the known username. So let's say we know the actual name of the user. Let's call him Bob, and then it will try the passwords one by one until it has the right passwords. So we can do that. We can run the command sudo crackmap execute, the SMB protocol, the target's computer address, username Bob, and it could be Bob, it could be another user. Now hackers might try to find it out using LinkedIn. They might try to guess the passwords from email addresses or in other ways. And then the password list -p for that password list. Now I'm in the same folder as here, so I'm in the default folder. And if I press enter, it will try passwords one by one. Let's enlarge this. So it started trying the passwords one by one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was the wrong password. You see red in red. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, also wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, also wrong. And it just continued that until it found the right passwords, which in this case is princess. So now the hacker is able to log in to this shared service. It knows the username Bob and it knows the password princess. So now it would be able to, in the folder, would go to the address. So that's 192.168. Well, depending on the on your network, what is the address of the computer. Now they will be able to log in with Bob and the username princess. Let's do that again. It's like the address. So in this case, username Bob, and it found the password is princess. and connect. And we can then browse this shared folder. And we can browse around. So you might try to go into shared folder or any other folder that are shared on the network. So you might try to use the same user with the username and password we just found. Click connect. Let's try it again. Okay, that didn't work for that folder. We might want to remember the passwords just for simplicity. But they could then try to access different folders on the drive. Now, depending if it's shared as Bob or another user, you might be able to access it or not access it. But this is the general idea. If something is shared on the network, they can then potentially access it. So we got access into the computer, or the hacker got access into the computer using the graphical interface. So it cracked the password. It was an insecure password, so now they got access using the address directly. And it has this graphical interface access, in this case using Tuner, this file explorer. But what if they want to do it from the command line? Many Linux users, many hackers prefer to use the command line a lot. And to do so, we can use a command called smb clients. So to access the drive, we can't directly move into it. We have to use the command smb clients. Then we say -u with the username, followed by // the address of the computer, and followed by / and then, for example, users. We specify the path. So we press enter, we type the correct passwords, and now we get this command line interface directly on the shared folder. Now here we can use the basic commands that you also use in Linux and sometimes on Windows. So we can type, for example, ls to list the files and folders. So we'll see in this case the folder Bob and default. We can enter our folder using the cd command. If I say cd Bob, it enters the folder Bob. We can see our current folder or current directory pwd. So we'll see the full path, the computer address /user/Bob in this case. We can browse around, go ls, and then we see a lot of different files on this computer. And also folders. You see files and folders here. We can download something from Bob's computer. So we can say, for example, get, and let's say we are interested in antiuser.ini. That get, and it just downloaded a file from Bob's computer on the network to our computer. If we go to the Kali folder, we can probably see it. Here we go. We just downloaded that from Bob's computer. So in this case, Bob shared his entire folder, his entire computer, which some users do that. Some share a specific folder, and some users share the entire drive, which can be a huge security risk. But because, as you can see, I can now browse around his entire computer. So if you want to upload something, you could use the put command. So let's say we add a new text file here. Let's say hacked.txt, and we'll upload that. So we type output hacked.txt, and now that is uploaded into Bob's computer. So if I list the files and folder, you'll see there's this file hacked.txt. So with SMB clients, we can browse around the computer in the terminal just like how you would on a general Linux system. To exit this, I think we can just type exit, and we're back into the Linux terminal. So now we're in the Linux computer. You'll see there's no longer SMB in front, so this is the actual Linux computer. If I now would type ls, you'll see just the files on the computer itself. So those are just the files I have on the computer instead of the SMB files. So if you want to connect again, just use the smb client command again with the username and the folder. Type the passwords, and you're back in that interface. Or alternatively, you can do it with a graphical interface, and then make sure to type smb:// in front instead of just // You would have to type the full thing, smb:// the computer address, and then the folder that you want to look in. So there are two different ways you can explore the shared drive, either using the file explorer, the graphical interface, or using the command line interface. So now you've seen how easy it is to access a vulnerable share. And it's important to pick good passwords if you share something on the network, and remember to only access things that you have legal access to. Only use these skills ethically. Now we've seen how attackers can access an SMB share or shared folder. Let's make sure your Windows system is secured against these type of attacks. In this video, we'll show you some steps you can protect your Windows system against these type of risks, these types of security risks. So first thing you might want to do is to enable guest access. So in some Windows system, guest access is enabled, so then anyone on the network doesn't even need a password. They can directly access the shared files without the password at all. So to check that, we can go to turn Windows features on and off. So turn Windows features on or off. Then if you scroll down this list, you'll see SMB. So if this one is enabled, SMB 1.0, sharing support, it would mean that there is direct access with the outdated protocol. So SMB version 1, it's a vulnerable protocol, and you don't want that. Next thing you want to do is to make sure that all the users have strong passwords. You can configure that in account settings. If we go to accounts, protection, we get this interface, and we can, for example, sign in for Microsoft accounts. So you have some security benefits. If it's local accounts, if they have to be local accounts, we can then run this command. So that's gpedit.msc. It starts this interface. In this case, it's disabled. There we could set password policies. If it is enabled, and then you can set the minimum length of the password. Now, you can also configure a term, make sure to turn on your firewalls if it isn't. So Windows comes with default firewall and security settings. So if your Windows firewall is disabled, make sure to enable everything, because it does help your cybersecurity, because otherwise someone might be able to remotely control your computer without you even noticing. So make sure to turn your firewall on. So make sure they are on instead of off. You might, depending on the security that you want, if you want to share on the network, then of course you don't want to block it. Otherwise, you could block all the incoming connections. Then you're sure nobody will access it. But then at the same time, your shared drive doesn't work. So it depends on what do you want. Do you want people or someone to access your drive, or do you want to block all the connections possible in your computer? So make sure your firewall is on and connected. Now, if you share a certain folder, make sure you don't give write permissions unless absolutely required. So if you go to properties on your shared folder and go to sharing, you can click on share, and you can see who you can share it with. So you might disable users you don't want to share it with. Any advanced settings, you can decide if you want to share the folder, and if you click permissions, you can decide if they should have full control, if they should be able to write the files and folders, or if it just read-only access. So you might want to disable that they have full control, or can change things. Maybe they only should have read access, so that they can't do any harm besides reading. However, be careful with reading, because it can be if you put sensitive files in there, and it is, for example, it has guest access, that someone could still access those sensitive files. So with sharing files and folders, you have to kind of make an inventory of what you want to share, and for how long, and who you want to share it with. So security is not an app, but it's a process where you want to regularly monitor and audit your SMB access. So who has access to which files and folders, in order to prevent unauthorized access to files and folders on your computer. or perhaps even full disk access, like you saw in the previous video. So by following these steps, you will reduce the risk of SMB-based attacks on your Windows machine. So remember, security is an ongoing process. So you want to stay updated and keep auditing your system. See what are you sharing on the network. Are there secure passwords or really weak passwords? And by weak passwords, remember that we did attacks with 1.4 million or 40 million commonly used passwords. So you want to pick passwords that are really unique, because hackers simply use these password lists with millions of passwords and try them one by one until they possibly have access. So you want to make sure your passwords are unique, and that's why sometimes these companies ask you for passwords that don't make any sense, like with special characters, lowercase, uppercase, and so on, because they are really, really hard to guess for a hacker in such automated tasks. So even if they have dictionary lists with millions of passwords and commonly used passwords, then those ones are really, really hard to figure out for an attacker.